Hey everyone, welcome back to the Tailored Psyche. This is episode 5 now, and I'm so excited about this guest that I have on today. And we actually only met just recently through a mutual friend. We hit it off immediately because my guest is Victoria Rose, and she's the founder of the Rose Reserve, which is a company dedicated, and shoot, I just blanked again. It's
clean beauty and conscious
clean beauty. Clean beauty and conscious living. So the show must go on. But a company dedicated to clean living and clean beauty, conscious living. There we go.
Yeah.
Yeah, we're good. But the really fascinating thing about Victoria's company is that she blends mental health, mindset, healthy living with very kind of surfacey topics of aesthetic and visual storytelling, of beauty and skincare. And a lot of people differentiate those things or think there's a connection, but I've at least never heard of a practitioner like yourself who has combined the two into an actual like formal structure and framework. So beyond that, Victoria has a background in journalism and a lot of social media and video production. But the main reason I'm having her on today, which ties to the purpose of this show, is that she is a perfect example of somebody who has recognized that the life that she was living is not as rewarding as she thought it would be, or it's not as rewarding as a life that she thought she could live. And she made the decision to go on that spiritual quest that we all have the opportunity to face at some point in our lives, to take life by the horns, design it how she wants to design it, and is now living that out in the way that she wants to. So I'm really excited to have you here, Victoria. Thank you so much for being here.
I'm excited to be here too.
And now, after I completely botched your little tagline, let's dive right in. So, starting, the funny thing for those of you watching this video is that Tori and I have only had a few conversations, and a perfect example is that we should probably record every single one of our conversations and just make a casual podcast out of it. So just the other day when we were prepping for this call, there were so many things that we wish we had recorded. And so likely we'll go pretty deep, pretty quickly. But what I want to do first is just start somewhat on the surface and on the level of your company. I want to know from your perspective, what is the tie between clean beauty, conscious living, and mental health?
Sure. So initially I didn't even realize there was a connection. However, I have always loved beauty products since I was 12. I would do reviews and tell people at school about them in my little Ed Hardy journal. You can guess my age based on that. And then as the years went on and I had my fashion blog and I would sometimes talk about beauty, I always felt that something was missing between beauty of what was on the outside and how it's connected to the inside. A lot of people don't make that connection within beauty, but it's really important. So I started exploring that more, and it led me to where I am now, which is I got certified in face reading. And for people who don't know what that is, the type of face reading that I do is ancient Chinese practice that's part of traditional Chinese medicine. And I trained with Lillian Bridges in Seattle, who it's been passed down in her family through generations. And basically we'll look at people's face structure, if they have any markings, lines, wrinkles, anything to do with that. And it will give you a picture of what's going on internally, emotionally, and what's going on in the person's mind. And we have found out, well, she's really found out since she's been doing this for decades, is that by changing what's going on internally, it will change what's on the exterior. And that was the final piece that I was looking for in connecting all of this stuff together.
Nice.
Yes.
Okay, very cool. And then so what has, as you kind of shifted that mindset and you were learning so much about that, what has shifted for you in terms of your own, the loop of between skincare and your own psychology? and your own mindset?
Right now, I completely feel that you can't have just skincare without emotional care. Those two things go together, and you can only do so much with skincare that you need the emotional component to really get the results you want. And also, it's not just about your skin. Obviously, people feel great when they have good skin, and I want that for everyone. But you can use your face and your skin as a guide to what's going on internally. So, for example, if someone has a lot of acne, they can use that as a guide. Where is it on the face? What is the acne telling you about what's going on emotionally? In Chinese medicine, acne is considered like an anger reaction. So diving into that is where people can really start seeing results. And I've worked with some of my clients to get rid of wrinkles, and I swear these wrinkles like melt off their face within an hour or like a week. It's insane and amazing.
Wow.
Yeah. Just by work, like going deep into, okay, well, this wrinkle's here. This is what I perceive it. Let's talk about what is going on in your life. And then I help them make connections. And it's honestly just so amazing. And I do it on myself every day. I'm like, okay, what is this marking? And like, what is happening here? So, and I've seen my own face change just since I started my certification process too.
Okay. Wow. Do you find in that process, because what you're describing is very much like this really fascinating middle ground between being a full-fledged therapist and being an esthetician. And so, and it's super cool, that's super niched. And so for you, have you found when you've been working with people that no matter the chicken or the egg, whether you're, you know, whether you're doing the face reading and that kind of implies a lot of the emotional things, or if they come in with emotional things and then you do the face reading, have you found that you've been able to stay kind of in that middle track, or has there been times that you've swayed more towards the therapist or more towards an esthetician?
It honestly depends what the issue is. I don't have like a license in being an esthetician. However, I feel like the studying that I've done for like the past 17 years of my life has really helped me in guiding people with just the external things, and I'm always like staying abreast on that. However, I find that it is really beneficial to myself and people that come in as clients to get to the emotional aspect of why that exists. And I'll give you an example of one of my clients who is totally fine with me sharing this story. This is like an easy face reading thing too. So she had a line right across the bridge of her nose, and that can indicate that you're not eating joyously. And for me, eating joyously is is the most important thing when it comes to diet. If you're eating things that are not making you happy, then what is the point of eating it? Because you can still find clean things to eat. So she was on a vegan diet, and she wanted to be on the diet, but then after a while, she realized she was not eating joyously, and but she didn't make that connection. And then I said, okay, well, you have that line there, are you eating like happily? And she was like, no, I'm actually not, I really want to eat a hamburger. And I said, okay, well, why don't we, I know like being a vegan is really important to you, so why don't for 1 week you put that aside and just see how you feel eating meat again? And she did that immediately following our meeting, and the line was gone in 1 week, and it hasn't come back, and it's been over a year.
Holy cow.
And it doesn't have to be, I'm not saying that vegans have to eat meat to get this. She was not eating joyously anymore, and that's why that line showed up for her.
Right. Which implies that it's not so much a commentary about their lifestyle or their choices. It's a commentary more about their emotional experiences.
Yes, and I think that so basically on the face, there's five elements, and each element has um, like each element is connected to a facial feature, and then there's emotion, and then there's specific foods and characteristics that are all attached to that. So I take all of that into consideration when looking at someone's face. Um, and I feel like eating joyously in itself is just like, start there. Help your skin too. And you notice like the color starts to come back into your face too when you're eating joyously because you're happy. So you're getting that glow from within. Even if you're eating tofu, if you love tofu, then that joy will still be there too.
Right. Nice. I mean, this is totally, this is completely redefining the whole look good, feel good, look good.
Right. And I
Fair.
feel like based on what I see online is that people go so overboard with that. They have to be on a specific diet. They have to be doing a specific workout. They have to be drinking a specific smoothie to attain this goal. And I also used to be like that. And it was almost impossible to attain the goal because I was so tunnel vision in, oh, I have to do it a certain way. Now I eat clean for the most part, but I've noticed that my body is just so much happier not doing all of that stuff. And then instead of doing like these intense workouts for me, I just do yoga and Pilates now. And kind of just like, I thought like, okay, if I'm going to get fit, I have to do like all this cardio and I have to do all this strength training. And it's more, I think the most important part is just listening to what your body is telling you, your body and your intuition, and connecting to that. And that also goes into how I work now too.
Nice. I love that, which is a great segue into something we bonded over the other day, which is the idea of cutting out the noise.
Yeah.
And you know, personally, on my from my standpoint in my business, being in this like full-fledged psychology and personal development field, there are many experts out there, especially in the realm of business, who will drill things into you over social media or in courses or what have you. This is the right way that has to happen. Similarly, in the nutrition field, there's so many diets and so many fads.
I've tried
And
most of them.
yeah, exactly. And there's so many people who will espouse a certain diet or fad who has thousands or millions of followers, and everybody will then try that fad and it doesn't work.
Right.
And so for me personally, on my side of things, I've had to work very, very hard, particularly this year as my New Year's resolution, to cut out the noise, focus on how I want to run my business, what feels good for me, what do I need to do, what deadlines do I want to set.
Right.
But tell me more about how that cutting out the noise either applies, first of all, to you in your business now as a solopreneur, but also for what the work that you do with your clients.
Yes. So for me, that was actually a huge thing that I worked on this year specifically. So in the past, I would, because I was unsure of what my offerings were going to be and how I was appearing to the world. And there were so many people with, this is the tactic you have to do, and this is the way to success for this thing. So, and I thought, oh, they're an expert. Like, I should try this. But however, I wasn't trying it because my intuition was guiding me to it. I was trying it out of probably like a lower vibration of fear, like, oh, I don't know what I'm doing, but this person does. So it's like you're going around and around and around, and even just saying it out loud sounds like chaos. But you're, again, in tunnel vision. So you're like, no, I have to do this. And then this year, I really started getting clear on what feels right to me and what is making me feel energized. What are the things that make the most sense, and how people, my audience, responds. And what I found, and what I also like the best, and what works the best for me, is that I show people on my stories and my Instagram and my YouTube videos, this is what I do, and maybe people will do the same thing and it will work for them, or maybe it will be a starting off point for them to research it and then find another healer that works for them. I think that is like ideal for people to do that. It's like, well, maybe I gave you the idea and then you find another way to go about it that makes sense for you. So I think that has been the most important for me.
Nice. That's awesome. So then, considering your journey, so now zooming back out a little bit into when you were working different semi-corporate jobs or just more formal, structured 9-to-5 jobs, and before you went into entrepreneurship, a lot of what we're talking about, we're cutting out the noise, also applies when people are working 9-to-5 or they're working in the corporate world. and they're working jobs that don't satisfy them, but they think for some reason they should be doing that. So what for you, what was it that got you to realize, okay, this road that I'm on is not the road that I want? Maybe this is coming from somebody else's suggestion or society's suggestion or what have you. But what got you to that like recognition moment of like, boy, this is not working for me?
So I think that I always felt that. However, I just didn't have the emotional fortitude to move on from that, because basically I was following of what my parents told me to do, which was after college, just get a job. You don't have to like it. You just need a job. And then, and I'm a person that really responds to when I don't like something, I really don't like something. Like, I don't want to do it. However, I if I am working for someone, I'm going to do my utmost best. So I think I personally was caught up in that for a while, that I'm doing a good job here. Um, Maybe this isn't my ideal job, but it's fine. And I also was having a really hard time identifying a clear path forward that would be financially safe. But then I got to the point that I was like, I actually like woke up one day and I was like, I can't do this anymore. I'm putting in my 2 weeks in like 1 week, and I don't know what my plan is. I have no plan, and I'm just going to figure it out. And that was 2 years ago, and it's been very rough. I'm not going to lie. I would recommend that people get a plan first. I just like, I feel like I just was like, no. And yeah, so then I just did that. And so yeah, now it's been 2 years and I'm going to launch my class that I had planned to do. However, I think that it took me a while because I had so many limiting beliefs in place that I needed to move out of the way first before I brought the class to fruition in the exact way that I'm doing it now.
Awesome.
Mhm.
And we'll come back to the class in a second. Nice little plug. I like that. But you're touching on something that's so important, and something that the majority of my clients talk with me about is the fact that the necessity for change wasn't at the tipping point yet for a long time. I think a lot of people, and you can correct me if this was the case, if this was not the case for you, but a lot of people will stay in jobs they don't like because if they're doing okay enough in that job,
Mhm.
that sort of confirmation and validation is enough to keep them from worrying about the fear and the risk of making some big change.
Definitely. And for me, my job wasn't horrible. There were things that I didn't like about it, obviously, which I think most people will have about anywhere they work. Um, but I think what happened is that probably 2 years before I quit my job, I started doing a ton of soul searching, and that helped me get to the point where I woke up and I was like, I can't do this anymore. Like, yeah, it was like something in me just snapped, and my mind and my soul were ready to go on to the next thing, even though that was terrifying. And I, I think if I had paused, I probably wouldn't have done it. But I was like, all right, it's go time. Let's do this. This is the moment.
Uh,
um, and I got mixed reviews from family and friends on doing that, but I just was like, I don't care like about your opinion anymore. And that I think in itself is something that a lot of people probably struggle with, is what is the reaction of family and friends going to be, because they don't see what your path forward is. And I wasn't even clear on my path forward, so it's not like I could be like, oh, here's my PowerPoint of exactly the plan, and it's going to go exactly the way I said, because that's exactly how life works. Like, no.
uh,
I think my parents were terrified. Actually, I know they were.
yeah, yeah.
But it's it's on the up now.
Well, if only we all had that PowerPoint that just that we knew our future.
Right, right.
Actually, the cool thing, I love that we're talking about this because I just listened to something yesterday that reminded me that if we knew our future, if we knew our path and the actual destination, it would take so much enjoyment away from the actual process and the journey.
Mhm.
Because if we're like, oh, we already know the outcome and it's like completely set, it's like, all right, well, cool, I can just kind of coast and that'll be the outcome, which means
Right.
you won't enjoy now.
Right. And then you might not even do the work that it took you to get to the outcome
Exactly.
because you're like, I already know what it is. But then it also might take away some of the anxiety that you have of is this going to work out? But I think trusting yourself is a key component of that. Like, you know what you're made of, and then you can also go find out and test your metal. So,
No, I think you're right. And I think the real crux of this is that we can't know the destination. Like a lot of people just want to know that result, the outcome. Parents really want to know that for the sake of security. It makes sense. They want us to be safe and secure. But the real judgment for people like us and anybody who's at that tipping point, that precipice, is to know that just the journey is going to be worth it, even if it doesn't get to a destination that you think it might.
mhm.
I remember when I went full time with my business, which was at this point actually almost 2 years ago too. It was the same thing, and I did try to have plans. That's the funny thing. I did try to have plans and planned it as much as I humanly possibly could. But as soon as that day hit, that it was just my business and that was it, a lot of those plans went out the window, and I realized just how much I didn't know about all of those plans anyway. So you have to take a natural step back. I think that's important for a lot of people to know.
Yeah, definitely. And I think that I'm glad that you're bringing that up because what I think another reason that I didn't take this step for so long is because I was always listening to podcasts of all of these people, and it just sounded like so perfect. I'm like, this thing just happened, and this thing just happened, and like, cute. And I was like, oh, this sounds so unrealistic. And I'm a really optimistic person, but I was like, um, okay. Like, I felt like they just left out a huge chunk of the struggle. It's like, did you forget about that? Like,
Yeah.
this is why people aren't taking these steps to go and be their idea, like their exact self who they want to be, is because they know that there is a struggle to get there, whether it's emotional, financial, like something has to change when you're making such a giant leap in your life. So I think that's important to let everyone know.
Yeah, absolutely. And even though I use the words step back, that doesn't mean that you're like failing and you made the wrong choice.
Exactly. It's kind of like a review period. Like, okay, I got this far, and now I need to assess how I got here
Yeah.
and go forward.
You take a little while to eat some humble pie,
Yeah, yeah,
figure out what you want to do, and then move forward.
mhm, exactly.
Now, something that stuck out in your description was that, did you mention that it was 2 years before you quit, that you had started your own kind of spiritual or personal
Yeah,
introspective quest?
yes.
Okay.
So that happened 2 years before. It's so cliche, but I remember I was on vacation in Hawaii at this hotel that I always wanted to go to, and it was New Year's Eve. I was with my family and my boyfriend at the time, and we were all outside watching fireworks, and they all went in, and I just kept staring at the sky, and I was like, I don't feel like as happy as I think I should be with all of these like things that look perfect in my life and that feel like they should be perfect. But I was like, I think that something is missing. I didn't know, so I just went back inside and was like, I'll think about this when I get back to Chicago. And then I came back and I let it simmer for a few months because I didn't even know where to start. And I think that's part of the issue for a lot of people. So then, luckily, Maura told me about a book. Um, so we started reading it together. And then I just was like, off to the races. And I started going to therapy, and I started just consuming so much content and kind of figuring out the pieces of my life that were missing. Um, and it wasn't even pieces of my life that were missing, it was pieces of me that were missing or that needed to find their way to tranquility.
Ah,
I think that is what those 2 years were spent doing. And I'm still doing that work. I think it's a lifelong process, but now I know all the pieces and it's not such a struggle. Like I couldn't even meditate for 1 minute. I would have anxiety. Now I'll meditate for 2 hours and I'm like, oh, here I am meditating again for 2 hours.
oh, oh, look, it's already 11 in the morning. Weird.
Right. It's so easy because I remember being at, and I think this is important for people, whether it's about their job or any spiritual journey, just starting somewhere is so important. I remember crying because I couldn't meditate for 3 minutes. And I was like, okay, one day I'm going to be able to meditate for 5 minutes and then 7 minutes. And I just kept telling myself that and like hyping myself up, like, okay, it's not always going to be like stuck at 1 minute and crying.
Yeah,
Like, we're going to go like keep moving up the ladder because that's what I do. So I think that was really important. Like, you also have to hype yourself up so much.
sure, absolutely. And not to mention the fact that meditation is a good example of something else whose noise you have to cut out.
Oh, for sure.
Like your definition of meditation is probably very different than mine, even if you and I are meditating for 5 to 7 minutes.
Hmm.
So it's the same thing. You have to set your own goal and your own practice, and then do what you said of like hype yourself up, get to the next goal that you're setting for yourself, not
Right.
somebody else.
And now it's funny with meditating, I so before I felt like I was setting very traditional goals for myself. It was just like going up the ladder. And now that I've been in this spiritual journey for several years, I feel that my goals are kind of abstract, like, oh, my goal isn't to meditate for 2 hours. I don't care how long I meditate. My goal is to just be with myself and like give myself the love and compassion that I need that day. My goal is to like connect with myself. And it's funny because at the start of this journey, I would have been like, that sounds so stupid. Like, that makes no sense. I'm not doing that. Um, or I would sit there and be like, how do I connect with myself? I need to love myself more. Like, what does that mean? And now I'm just like, okay, and just kind of sit there and like let my thoughts unfold. And I think that the further you go in your journey, whether it's with your career or that, it's like the goals evolve so much more than what you originally thought they would be throughout the span of your life and experience.
Oh yeah, absolutely. And as you and I have talked about, if you're aware of the little steps in the process,
Mhm.
you're not only aware of the struggle, but after 2 years, you're like, holy cow, look at all the progress of little things I've made,
Right.
to the point where now loving yourself or giving compassion is so much easier than it
Hmm.
used to be. It used to be this taboo cliche thing for you. Now it's this kind of thing of like, oh, you can kind of switch it on
Hmm.
if you need to, or you know exactly what you need to do to reinsert the practice of it.
Absolutely. And a really small example with that, well, it sounds small, but it's been huge for me, is that I used to be so critical of my body. And now I don't know the last time I've said something negative to myself about my body. Um, I feel like so happy with how I look. I've also gained like 10 pounds since I've started this journey, um, which I feel my body needed to gain. So I wasn't trying to lose it or anything, and I just let it happen. But before, I would never let myself have gained 10 pounds. And now I was like, oh, okay, like this actually like feels good on me. And I tell myself like all the time, like I love myself so much. And before, I think that lack of self love is why all the criticism was coming to myself. I would never talk to someone like that, but to me, it was like, oh, you need to do this. Like you have cellulite, you like have one pimple. Like, oh my gosh, it's so funny to see the progress, and you don't even realize it till one day you're just like, wow, I'm doing all this like kind stuff for myself. Why didn't I do this sooner?
Right, right, absolutely. And this of course branches into so many different areas, but before we get too far away from it, something that I wanted to come back to about in your introspective quest for multiple years, I think, well, actually, no, I know, both from personal experience and from all of my client work, that people are nervous when they start to introspect, when they start to go down such a rabbit hole like you did, because there's content everywhere. There's like so many Moras out there who will recommend so many different books or podcasts or things. And it can become extremely overwhelming unless you know where to compartmentalize what you're learning or how to apply it.
Mhm.
And so in my work, it's talking about psychological safety, like people diving into themselves, but not knowing how to get back out. And so in your experience, because you just went so fully, you just dove right in to the self-reflection and the reading and the consumption,
Mhm.
how did you draw that line, or how did you absorb some things and or compartmentalize other things to save for later?
Sure. Well, I've always been really curious, so I kind of let my curiosity lead the way, and then I would be like, okay, this feels good to me. Like, I want to do this. However, in the beginning, I was doing a lot of things out of fear because I was trying to attain a goal. I was like, oh, I have to do this class because, like, I'm trying to find the solution to this problem. Now I do more things because I just want the information and I know that it would help me expand my thoughts and up level in my life somehow, but it's not because I don't feel like I'm missing something at this point. So I think the way that I did that was I journaled every day and would write down my thoughts, and then every month or so in the beginning I would go back and review and then be like, oh, I actually like made progress on this thing that I was freaking out about, and or like I found this part of a book that I read like 2 months ago, and I go back in my journal and then I see a quote that I wrote from it and I'm like, oh, this is exactly what I need at the moment. So I think just kind of following a path, it doesn't have to be any specific way, just letting your inner child or like your childlike curiosity guide you, I think is helpful. And also, I feel like I wasn't really connecting with my emotions in the beginning, but I feel like now, if I was going back to start, I would do that first. So I think that was helpful with the journal and kind of just following the curiosity.
I think that's such important advice. And kind of like we were saying before, meditation is different for everybody. I've
Right.
found that journaling is totally different for everybody. I actually coach people on the many different ways to journal because people are like overwhelmed and they don't know what kind of journaling would be helpful.
Right.
But I think the main point of what you just said is follow the curiosity.
Hmm.
Other people will say like follow the energy, follow like where is like what's guiding you, what's piquing your interest at the time.
Exactly. And doing that also helps you connect with your intuition, which so many people are cut off from. And I was cut off from that. And I remember, and I've always been really intuitive. However, in the past years that before I started working on myself, I was losing that intuition because I wouldn't follow it. And it would be yelling at me, and I'd be like, no, no, no. So then I got a download one day, like, if you don't keep, like, try to follow this again, you're going to lose this connection. And then I got really nervous. And I actually got my phone stolen. And I knew my phone was going to get stolen, and it didn't happen. And I was like, oh, this, I was like, I have to follow my intuition. And then a few months later is like when I started working on myself. But yeah, I like follow the signs, everyone.
Mhm. Yeah.
I feel like they're there to give you advice and guide you and like lead you to what you want. And but then people stray from that because they're not following that, because sometimes following that means they have to make a change that is not comfortable.
Bingo.
Mm-hmm.
I couldn't have said that better myself. Because I talk about this in my business as the two doors. There are two thresholds you have to cross to live the life that you want. You have to recognize what kind of change you want, or that there is a change, and then it's like, okay, here's the time. Like, yep, I'm ready. Let's make a change. But then that just gets you into this little hallway,
Mm-hmm.
because then the second door is you actually committing to the action. Because through that next door is no man's land.
Right.
You have not done anything to fertilize that soil.
Mm-hmm.
And so I talk with so many people who get stuck in that hallway because, like you were saying, like their intuition and their gut and their instincts are just sending up alarms and flags all the time. And they're like, okay, cool. Like nervously listening to it, but
Right.
then being like, but there's too much risk. There's too much mystery. There's too much uncertainty. I can't do that.
Right. Exactly. I love that analogy of the hallway and the doors. So good.
Thank you. So another thing that came up and is totally in line with everything that we're talking about now that I want to make sure I ask you about is, you know, the introspective journey when you're hearing your instincts, you're hearing your intuition, but then you are applying it to something, or you're reading a book and you're applying it to something. Everything about this type of journey we're talking about is very inside out.
Mm-hmm.
And then outside feeds the inside again. So it's that constant loop. And I have my own frameworks for it, of course, because there's everything about psychology and your environment and social situations. But you shared with me that you have this 4-step framework about how, even though a lot of your work is on conscious living and clean beauty, see, now I can remember it, clean beauty, conscious living, um, there's so much more of an emphasis on the
Yes.
in that process. So why don't you walk us through your 4-step framework, or your 4-part framework?
Sure. So this is the framework that I'll be using in my online class, and I would say this is like one of the ways that I go about living my conscious life. So everything starts internally with mindset. Then you work out to diet. Then you go out to skincare, and then you go out to your environment. And within those frameworks, you're in mindset the longest. So the further you go out, the shorter you're in that area. Um, and within those, I feel like the mindset component is like weaved through all of that. And once you get to environment, it's more of just creating like a very like loving space for yourself physically and energetically. um, I am really into studying energy in the past year, and I'm also going to be doing a mentorship next year and all of these things, which I'm really excited about.
Nice.
So I think that being aware of your energy and how what's happening internally affects externally, not just on you, but how others perceive you and how they react to you, and the scenarios that happen in your life. And that's kind of like a very broad version of the law of attraction and manifesting, which, like we've been talking about, there's a million different ways to do things, and there's a million different ways to manifest. And I think that's part of the beauty of like doing all of this work, is there's a million ways to get to the same goal. So I think all of those 4 components together will get you there.
I love that, because I mean, especially in a lot of like the clean beauty, I'm just going to keep saying it, clean beauty, conscious living. I'm just going to come up with every opportunity. But so much of, I'll just say, the aesthetic world about beauty, about fashion, about skincare, everything, a lot of it is so external. And it's like almost external going internal, like look good, feel good. And that's the order, right? What I love about your framework, though, is that it mirrors a lot of what I've learned in psychology and direct mental health work, where if you do something in your environment, that helps a little bit, but that's mainly just like a little coping skill. You're not actually changing the root of the issue. And the root of the issue is internal, because you can change your environment as much as you can, but that won't change you or how you feel.
Yeah. So that's actually a huge part of it, of why I had to find like this solution, because I felt that I also had like a lot of physical I'd say like syndromes. So I had IBS, I had polycystic ovarian syndrome, and I've healed myself from all of those things naturally. But for a while, because I wasn't trusting my intuition, I was going from doctor to doctor to doctor, and they wanted to give me like a prescription. And I just was like, you're not getting to the root. I don't want to be on a prescription the rest of my life and like have to eat like one food. That's not living. Like, so I was getting continuously more angry. And So that is also part of how this came to be, is because I was looking for solutions to why I felt like garbage. But then once I started dealing with the emotions and kind of focusing on the solution of what I look like as a healthy person, it went away. And I also had like an amazing manifestation with my polycystic ovarian syndrome, that I just tried because I had no other options. And my gynecologist was not helpful. And I wanted to find a solution and then help other people get to these conclusions themselves too. That, and I don't have like anything against people taking medicine or any of that. It's more of just like doing what's best for you. And none of that stuff fell aligned with me. And I knew that. And so I was like, all right, fine. I will find the solution and then I'll come back and tell you about it. So I don't have IBS. My stomach is great. I don't have polycystic ovarian syndrome anymore. And they said it's an incurable syndrome. And I do not have it anymore. So there's that.
There's that, yeah. So,
Yeah.
yeah. So to the gynecologist who doubted you or didn't treat you well,
Oh, she was mad.
the evidence.
Yeah,
That.
I went back and made her ultrasound me.
Oh wow, good for you.
Yeah. Then I was like, all right, see you never.
Yeah. Well, as you've said, a lot of the people that you've mentored with and the things that you've learned are now becoming much, much more rooted with evidence,
Right. Yeah.
scientific evidence or case study evidence. So you just going back to get an ultrasound is like, boom, there's the evidence.
Well, I don't think they still believed me, even though it was there on the screen. However, I think there is a large cognitive dissonance with Eastern medicine, which is like acupuncture and all of these things, because for so long now in our country, at least, what has been prevalent has been pharmaceuticals and, oh, here's your band-aid for this, here's your band-aid for this, instead of getting to the root of the problem, which personally I think is always the emotional aspect. And now there's a lot of doctors writing books about that, like Gabor Mate, and I hope I said his name right. I'm like one of his biggest fans, and I should know how to say his name. But anyways, I love his work. He talks about this. There's a lot of people who have talked about this. I feel like their work kind of just gets like falls into the cracks sometimes. And then so now part of my job, or what I tell myself my job is like finding all of this information and then sharing it with people so they have at least the ability to know that there's other options for them. Whether they take them or not, that's up to them, and I totally respect their choices. But yeah, it's important, and I know this work with myself and with some of my clients and my other face reading friends clients has made a huge difference just in working with emotions. So I think that's huge.
Yeah, yeah, that says a lot.
Mm-hmm.
So then while we're on this topic, since you're very clear on this kind of your mission, so to
Yeah.
speak, of what your job is to convey this information, tell me more about the course that you are creating.
Yes, so it's called Dream Skin, and it actually came out of when I had polycystic ovarian syndrome, because one of the side effects is to have terrible cystic acne all along your chin. And not only do you have the acne, but you have facial hair, which amazing because I love having facial hair as a woman. So I actually had woken up and I was at a work conference and I was doing all the social media. So I had to talk to about 5,000 people during the week, and not an exaggeration, there are 5,000 people there. And I woke up with all of this acne on my face. And for some reason, I just had an idea to look up face reading, and I didn't even know what it was. I just was like, oh, I must have heard this somewhere. Or like, now I think I just got like a divine download because I was meant to do this work. So then from there, I started kind of coming up with a way to heal myself, and um, nothing was working with the acne. Like I knew the polycystic ovarian syndrome was gone, but the acne was not. And it was really bad. It was like all on my chin too. And I wouldn't take pictures at that time. Um, so I came across this meditation to do, and I just thought, And I had only been meditating for maybe 6 months. So I was like, whatever, I'm so desperate. I will try this and see if it works. And I put it off for 2 weeks. So then I finally did it and it worked. My acne went away in 3 days, all of it, which is also like a record healing time.
Wow.
But since then, I've learned how magnificent the body is in healing itself once you give it the directive. So from there, I took all of the information about using mindset to heal your body, and I've done 3 years worth of research on it since. And then I took the diet component of what I had already known and studied. Then I took all the skincare and then the environment work, combined it into a 4-part framework, and that will be launching in October for
That's
men and women. So I'm really excited about it, and all types of acne too. It doesn't have to be just from polycystic ovarian syndrome. Um, some of my people who have just tried one aspect of the course have had amazing results. One of the women who did it, she had a breakout from detox acne when she went vegan, the same person. Um, and she did, I think she did 2 of my like a million different things I have in the class. And within a month, her entire face was healed and it was covered in acne, like bad. So yeah, it was just like really awesome to see like, okay, this doesn't just work for me, this works for other people too. So I'm so excited.
And it seems like that particular woman needs to like put you on retainer.
I know.
That's awesome.
Yes.
Now, do you feel like, we're talking specifically with your course relating to acne and an acne that's caused by a very particular trigger. So do you feel like this is something that is, or is effective or usable for everybody, or is this like not actually very applicable to certain populations? Because I'm just thinking about like when we're going through puberty, when we're younger, acne is very normal. It's very hormonal. It just kind of pops up. And is that like a natural hormonal thing at other times in life too? So would this kind of thing work for teenagers going through puberty?
Yes, it will honestly work for all types of acne because while there are different types of pathology to get to acne of why it develops, there's actually no definitive answer of why it develops, at least in Western medicine. So in Chinese medicine, like I said earlier, acne is like anger that's under the skin and it's like coming out, but it's not coming out in a healthy way. And that's why it's coming out. So I've taken all of these parts of Western medicine and Eastern medicine. I've included in my course over 100 different like scientific studies that I've found, and then so these are all of my conclusions and what's worked for other people too. For example, for me, I had it from PCOS. My friend had it from detox, and other people have had it from hormonal, and it works all the same. And also, there has been an uptick in adult women getting acne, and it's because the hormones have been off. So helping bring them back to that space. And I just know like once you don't have something on your face that is causing you like so much stress, because a lot of people are like, I don't want to leave my house, I'm so embarrassed, I don't want to date. It's also like flooding into other parts of their life. So I feel like just helping them with that one aspect will help them to shift and up level so much more in other aspects of their life too.
Absolutely. And yeah, we're now talking about the whole picture of psychology too, of just how what you're talking about is the psychological permission of asking the body to heal itself.
Right.
And then when it does heal itself, you feel so much better about how you look, how you can carry yourself, how your body feels, which feeds your psychology even further.
Mm-hmm. Definitely.
Very cool. Very cool. And so with this in mind, and with this journey in mind that, like you said, it's been a couple of years now that you've been on this challenging, tumultuous roller coaster ride of entrepreneurship. But you've found your groove in terms of like your authentic self-expression, as well as your groove in terms of your mission, who you're serving, how you're serving them. And now you're diversifying to an online course instead of just coaching. And so for you, because this is very much alive in me too, as I'm developing a new product as well. Um, I have noticed and I have experienced how within a given day, I'll go through periods of total self-confidence, like
Mhm.
total trust, total clarity of like, yeah, excuse me, I don't know where this is going, but I got this.
Mhm.
And then 20 minutes later, it could be, no, I don't. This is the worst idea ever. Why am I doing this? Like, I don't know what I'm doing. And and it's a constant like checks and balances kind of thing in your own mind of just reminding yourself, oh my gosh, why am I doing this? And so for you, because it is kind of that back and forth roller coaster day in and day out for solopreneurs, for people who are listening to this who are ready to take that next step, whether it's entrepreneurship or just a scary next step to do something new, how have you dealt with that tumultuous roller coaster ride? And what advice, if different from that, would you give them?
Sure. I'd say my advice is very different from what advice I heard initially. Um, I would write down every single thing that you want to occur, like every single success, whether it's just like get through 6 hours of work today, and then of like, and it doesn't have to be like, oh, this has to be like a year's worth of success. I just write down every single thing. That's step one. And then as I'm thinking about them and I have limiting beliefs come up, I write that on the page next to it and I write down all of those limiting beliefs. And then step three is that next to those limiting beliefs, I write down the exact belief that I need to have to get me what I wrote down in step one. And then I go on a mental diet of saying anytime any of the limiting beliefs come up, I'm like, no, actually, I do deserve to have this. Or actually, I already am successful. Because you have to put all of these thoughts in your mind. You can't have the success without feeling that you're successful already. It just doesn't work that way. And I know there's been books over like the past century, like Think and Grow Rich is a prime example of this. Um, and I think just starting there will help you kind of stay on track because then you can always go back if you're having a day like, oh, why am I doing this? Go back to step one. Oh, here's why I'm doing this because these are all the things I want to attain and like help others and do all this stuff. Um, that's actually when I decided, because I was taking a break from this work for a while to kind of figure out exactly what I wanted to do in my career. And when I was ready to come back to it, that is the exact first three things that I did. I was like, I'm not doing any work until I'm clear on these three things. And then once I had the actual belief system running a little more smoothly, when I started working again, I was like, oh, I should have done this years ago. It was so much easier because I had already put those beliefs in place and I was already focusing on the solution instead of the problem.
Yeah.
Difference for me at least.
And also you're compartmentalizing the problem. You know,
Right.
you're looking at it as a means to figuring out the solution as opposed to just dwelling on the problem as the only thing in front of you.
Right. And I feel like that's where a lot of people can get stuck. And I even get stuck in that in some places too. And this is like even a part of manifesting. You have to like say what you want to get it and then get your beliefs in line. So I try to like take that framework of how I manifest into every single aspect of my life. And I think that's really useful.
Well, I love that framework. And I'm not surprised that you have a framework for it.
I have
Being
a framework for everything I've noticed. And
that-
it's a spreadsheet because I'm spaz.
well, that lends to discipline. That lends to organization.
Yes.
So it's good. It's good for creative thinkers to put things into frameworks because we need that, and we
Yeah.
need to be able to offer those to people.
Well, and I think even as you're going about on your own journey, if you're not an entrepreneur, just having the techniques that you can refer back to when you're in a down spot, like, oh, I'm spiraling right now. And then you're like, wait, I have a tactic for like when I'm spiraling. Like, let me pull that out. Or you can like ask your brain, like, okay, if I'm going down this road again and I've done this 50,000 times, brain, remind me that I already know how to get myself out of it, like pull myself out. And then you shorten the time that you're in it every single time. And then all of a sudden you're not having anxiety about that thing anymore. So
Yeah,
it's really cool to like see all of these frameworks that people have and like all the techniques and how it applies to your own life.
absolutely. I love that because I have a similar framework I use for myself and that I coach
Mm.
that isn't as spreadsheety as yours, but is still organized in the sense of like, okay, this is what I'm feeling. This is how I'm talking to myself right now. These are the beliefs, and this is pretty negative. And so when I think about the opposite of those beliefs or those stories, I'll say like, what would someone do, or what would I do if I was feeling X, or if I was thinking this way instead? And similar to yours, and similar to the way that you just described that process, it's an externalization process. You actually kind of like are imagining yourself in a different state, or even in a different persona sometimes, to be like, oh, cool, like that's what I can do. Almost like you're looking at it in the magazine.
Yes. So actually, when I was first learning to manifest, I only did guided meditations because there was no way I was going to be sitting in silence by myself. But a lot of them would have you project the issue onto a screen, and then you're watching it, so you're actually removed from the issue. So it sounds like a very similar thing to
Oh,
what you're talking about
yeah.
too. And
Yeah.
that was really helpful for me, just to be like, oh yeah, I don't have to actually be in the issue. I can be apart from it. And then once you're apart from it, you're like, well, I don't have to go back to that. I'm already out of it. Because
Yeah,
I'm looking at it now, so I'm not in it. And yeah, it's really
absolutely.
cool.
Absolutely. I just did that with one of my clients recently. I did a visualization where they actually externalized their shame into
Mm.
something, and they visualized what it actually looked like and how big it was, how close it was to them, and all this thing. So it was trippy in a really powerful way for them to, mid visualization and towards the end, recognize, oh wait, I'm actually separate from
Yes.
my shame right now.
Oh, wow, so
Yeah.
rewarding to do that.
Oh, it's so cool. Especially because this person just needed the permission to let go of the shame. She had just been carrying it with her. And
Oh,
so in this instance, she just saw the separation, and then she was like, oh, well, yeah,
yeah,
I don't need to carry that. And then it was like, boom, God.
yeah. Sometimes that's all it takes is like, I'm actually not in this. I can leave now.
Exactly. Exactly. Which leads to a topic I've talked a lot about recently, which is confidence. I mean, the majority of people come to me because they want some kind of level of confidence. We
Mhm.
boil it all down. They're just looking for some kind of confidence and self-security in that way. The way that I talk about confidence, though, is about self-trust, because the word confide comes from the roots meaning trusting, having all trust. And so certainly in entrepreneurship, as we've been talking about, you need to have a lot of self-trust.
Mhm.
Even if there are days that you don't really have faith in yourself and don't think that this is all going to work or whether it's worth it, you still have to trust your ability to turn on the camera and do that video,
Mhm.
or get on the call and talk to your paying client. It's like your responsibility. So still have to have that self-trust that you can provide and that you are valuable. You have value. So for you, since that ties into everything you've talked about with your whole journey, either what has that, you can either answer it more specifically or you can answer it kind of generally. What has been your journey with self-trust and confidence, and or if different from what you've already shared, what do you do to kind of maintain that sense of self-trust and confidence?
Hmm. I think for me, I've always trusted myself, even if I didn't know what was going to happen. Um, Especially once I connected to my intuition, I couldn't see the way out, but I just knew that it existed for me in some capacity and I was going to get there. Um, so I think just always like telling yourself, like, I'm like going to be here for myself. Like, I'm the one that's doing this. It's like safe to be with myself. Because I know some people don't feel safe within themselves. And I feel like that's something that's so imperative that you work on as you're doing this journey too. Like, do I trust myself to make this decision? So for me, I don't think that has been the biggest challenge, but it's like the confidence aspect is a little different for me, because I felt like before, if I was more confident in myself, then I wouldn't have been searching externally for all of these things. So I guess maybe I wasn't trusting myself as much as I thought I was. But now that I completely have trust in myself, I just ask myself the question, like I would ask those people, like, oh, do you think this looks good? Oh, yeah, I do. Okay, thank you. So like I have that conversation with myself now, and I also live alone. So if I say it out loud, that's like probably what happens because no one's here to talk to me. So I'm like, I'm not technically having a conversation with myself, but I am, and I think that's been more helpful because it's just kind of giving myself the response that I wanted from other people, and being like, no, that actually is the right thing. Oh, does it feel right to you? Yes, it does. Okay, let's move forward with it. Oh, it doesn't feel right with you? Well, let's go back to the initial reason why we were doing this, and then another path will appear. I also just have a ton of trust in the universe, God, to guide me. That's actually one of my mantras, is that I'm always divinely guided, which I really am. I feel like I'll ask a question and I won't see the answer, and then I'll get the answer in like a really strange and funny way, and I'm always laughing because I'm just like, that was so weird. A perfect example is when I was building my newsletter. I was really struggling to find a platform that I liked, because I really wanted to design something that was beautiful, and a lot of the platforms that I had previously known about, it was really complicated and all of this stuff. So then I just was like, all right, I'm going to let this go. I'm going to give it to God and see what happens. Not 1 minute later, I go onto my own email, and like I had scrolled down on an email, and then it said at the bottom, oh, this platform was lovingly created by Flowdesk. And I was like, what is Flowdesk? So I clicked it. It was a company that had just launched their newsletter site, and now I am an active subscriber because it is legitimately amazing. And it was just funny that I was like, oh, I'm so annoyed and frustrated. I was like, I'm not going to be annoyed and frustrated anymore. The answer will come 1 minute later. Boom.
Yep.
And that happens all the time. And I feel like just letting it go and trusting that the answer will come to you if you don't have it is what has been really, really beneficial for me.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. And I agree with that. And it's like what you're talking about is like getting out of your own way, asking the right question, asking the question that you really do want, and change around the vocabulary of the question to be more positive, but also just like, it's a classic Jesus take the wheel situation. It's like, you can ask the question, but then you step into the passenger seat.
Yes, and
That's
that's really hard for a lot of people. It was really hard for me for a long time, because I had to be like, no, I have to drive this bus. I'm in control. And I used to be like such a control freak. I feel like I've probably stepped back a lot from that, and I'm like, okay, I'm clearly not in control of everything, and I accept that. I don't even want to be in control of everything, I realized. So letting go, that has been really nice too.
Yeah, yeah. And it's humility. I mean, we're talking about humility. And I think that's one of the coolest things that I picked up on when you and I first chatted and I've gotten to know you, is that everything about your brand and everything you talk about, everything is very much like, is very stylish, very cool. It's all, it's all, as you said, the clean beauty and conscious living. There we go. So the clean beauty aspect. So a lot of it is kind of like aesthetic first, but the amazing thing that shines through is your humility and your thoughtfulness and your groundedness and your approachability. And you're welcome. And I mean that. I mean that too, because if you were just focusing on the surface level elements of aesthetics, just kind of as a philosophical field, then you would not be doing the work that you're doing, nor would people come to you for the type of support that you can provide.
Right. Yeah, And I think that's really important because before it was even hard for me to pin down what I wanted my aesthetic to be. And I've changed it several times. And now I look at it and I'm like, oh my gosh, I just love this. This is so me. I'm so happy with it. And I think that couldn't come through until I got really clear on exactly who I wanted to show up as in this world. And a lot of it was, I was kind of minimizing who I was because I thought I had to be this specific thing. Because I was listening to all of these people, and not even my friends or family, more just like experts.
Yeah.
And you have to do this way for success and this way. And then I finally was like, shut up. Like, I don't want any of this. To bring it back all the way to what we were talking about, I don't want any of this garbage. Um, there's in the spiritual community, there are several stereotypes, and I do not fit into any of them. So I've kind of decided, yes, you can be smart, spiritual, and sexy. I'm also really irreverent online, and for me, it works because it's my personality. It's not like I'm trying to be that way. And I think that's been really important to put out there for me because when I wanted spiritual people, I could never find one that resonated with me. I would like some of the things that they offered, but like the design was weird, or like the way they spoke was very like it came off as condescending or judgmental. And for me, I just want the space to be so inclusive of everyone who wants the information that I hope that when they're viewing my stuff that they're like, oh, this is actually like a fun way to live and not so strict and like a crazy like lifestyle that I don't want to partake in. Like, oh, it can actually be cool to be close to your highest self and like be out there with your emotions and be spiritual, and you can still like wear a string bikini. So
Yeah.
that's my vibe.
I like it. You just described your brand right there. Perfect.
Exactly. String bikinis and spirituality.
Yeah, there you go. But you're so, I mean, you're totally, you hit on something extremely important. And not only does it relate to my brand too, and my brand of coaching and counseling, but these days the lines are blurring.
Yes.
There's, everything is holistic in some kind of way. And I would say I'm similar to you in the sense, with my brand, in the sense of the fact that I do provide therapy, but I also provide it in a coaching context, but I also provide mindfulness work. And I, you know, as you do, I know so many different interventions and
Right.
directions to take people
Mm-hmm.
that I'm not going to pigeonhole myself. And so,
Right.
you know, for instance, there's a guy I've been working with recently. He needed a guided visualization,
Mm-hmm.
but it's not like I'm helping him become Buddhist
Right.
or, or learn how to meditate.
Right.
He just needed it that day to get over this one point of his stress and anxiety.
Mm, so
So
good.
there's that holistic, it's kind of a holistic playground that I think you and I are tapping into. That as long as we know who we are trying to attract, we don't have to fall into any of those categories or lanes.
For sure. And something I really appreciate about your work specifically is that what I find with a lot of men in the spiritual community is they fit like one specific stereotype, and it's so like about the physical body and all of this stuff. And I feel like it's hyper masculine and stuff. And I feel like when I look at your content and I watch your videos, there's so much like peace that comes out of yours. And for me, that's who I would want to refer someone to. Um, Someone who's like putting all of this like serenity out there, and it's, you know, you don't have to live up to this specific stereotype of what a guy in the spiritual world should look like. And I feel like that's really important because um, sometimes this work can be very exclusionary, and it should not be at all. Like every single person should be included in this work because it is detrimental to our lives. So
Mm-hmm. No, yours. Well, first of all, I appreciate that. I appreciate that a lot. And it's so true. And I think in both of our fields, there's so much fear around taking the step that's necessary to get get a healthier life, get a healthier body, get a healthier mindset, just because people know that it takes work, but it's also raw and vulnerable.
Right.
And so I'm glad that that comes through in my videos, because we do need to instill this sense of relief and serenity and peace that is attainable for people, no matter what kind of change they're trying to make.
Definitely. I completely agree.
Nice.
Yeah.
Um, I mean, this is great. There's so many different directions we could go in this, but
I know.
this is awesome.
Yeah,
Um,
like 9,000 days.
yeah, exactly. We'll just keep recording. But one thing I want to make sure that I comment on that you brought up is how you talk to yourself about, and like the language you have, just by example of you living alone, and you're like asking yourself, does this look good? Yeah, it does. Let's go. I just saw something a couple of days ago, so this is all synchronistic, that was saying something to the effect of reflection and meditation is like looking in a mirror,
Mhm.
and then and sometimes we don't like what we see, but what's the point in arguing with our reflection?
Oh my gosh, seriously.
And I love that. I love that humility, because it's like, it's so true. We spend so much time arguing with ourselves, trying to like prove some kind of unhealthy or negative point
Mhm.
about ourselves, when really it's like, you're just like, if you can just call out the stupidity of arguing with yourself
Right.
and do what you do of just being like, yeah, does this feel good? Yeah, it looks good. Let's go. Like, it's so much simpler. You spend so much less time in the fear and in the worry.
Absolutely. And I feel like this is really important when you're working with limiting beliefs of anything that you're doing in your life, because it's like you're fighting with yourself. The limiting belief is what you created. It's not true for everyone. That's why it's a limiting belief. And sometimes you need like a coach or like a friend to pull you out of that and be like, listen, this is dumb. Literally say it out loud, and then you realize, like, oh my gosh, that is so silly. Like, why would I ever say that? I've, over the past few years, written down thousands of limiting beliefs I had. I think I just read the other day that we have between like 50,000 to 70,000 thoughts a day, and like up to 50,000 of those are negative. And I was like, well, I'm pretty sure I've written down half of those in the past 4 years.
Yeah.
But so it's just like funny when you're like watching all of your thoughts in meditation or like a mental diet, and you're just like, and then you get to the point where like, that is so dumb. I can let this go. But sometimes I've had limiting beliefs that like I've been working on for a year, and they obviously go much deeper into like my childhood and all of that stuff, which is why they've been sticking around for that long. But usually when I have a limiting belief, it's like a few days, bye. Like, I don't need this thought anymore. It's so useless. So it's like funny, like once you start watching all of that, you're like, wow, I really thought that. And then you see how it created the environment that you're currently in, the circumstances. And then when you change it, you create the space to create something new. And I feel like that is such an important part of my work too, and yours as well. Like creating that space to let the success and what you want to shine through.
Absolutely. And I love that what you said about the limiting beliefs, because it's true. The ones that we've held on to since childhood, those are the ones that are so deeply rooted. And obviously a plant that is more deeply rooted was more likely to be a really strong tree. And so like, that's why we hold on. That's why those beliefs are so strong and intense and stick around for so long, because they've been rooted for so long. But what you're talking about now is like, if you're actually, this is a huge practice for anybody in psychology or just healthcare in general. If you're able to become aware of your negative thinking on a daily or hourly basis, and like list them out, if you're a pro like you are, and like actually write them down, then they don't have enough time to root down enough to be trees. They're just weeds at that point, and you're able to just be like, nope, just pluck it out and move on.
Right. Yeah, and that work is like really necessary if you want to keep up leveling your life, because those are the beliefs that keep you in place of staying in a job that you don't like, or staying in a relationship that you were never meant to be in the first place, or like letting someone in your family like talk negatively to you. It's like so interesting once you start looking at all of these things, and a lot of the beliefs don't have to stay, but so I feel like also clearing those ones out help you clear out the really deep stuff, because it's kind of like shoveling away the dirt above the roots. It's like you have to shovel that away before you pull the whole tree out.
Uh-huh.
So that doing that work, and that's sometimes why the deep beliefs take so long, because you have to keep shoveling away and shoveling and shoveling until you're at the root, and then you can just be like, chop.
Yeah. I love that metaphor. I like that a lot. And the funny thing is, which is also kind of gross, is that I thought of root canals at the same time when they have to like, and they expose the nerve. It's the same thing. It's just a root of a nerve. And that is like the emblem of how painful it can also be to uproot that belief, how challenging it can be, or how long it takes to clear the dirt in your much more comfortable metaphor as opposed to the dentistry one.
Yes, for sure. But it's so rewarding once you break away from that. And I know a lot of people, myself included, have like such deep rooted money beliefs. Like, I feel like that's the one that people are like, oh, don't even like talk to me about this topic. Like, because they cling on to them so much. And it's like, well, why don't you start looking at the beliefs that are creating this? But I feel like they have to be willing to do that work first. But if you
Yeah,
are willing to do this work, then the rewards are even better than what you could ever imagine.
absolutely.
And I just had deja vu saying that I had like said that to you before, and I was like, oh,
Yeah, we're just tying off all the loops. This is good.
yeah.
Nice. Well, before I ask our closing question for the episode, is there anything more about your brand or about how people can contact you that you would love to, that you'd like to have the opportunity to chat about?
Um, no, people can find me at the Rose Reserve, on Instagram, YouTube, which I will have more videos soon on there. And I'm really easy to get a hold of on Instagram. And then I will send you the link for my waitlist for Dreamskin if anyone wants to be put on the waitlist for when it launches in October.
Awesome.
Otherwise, yes, come play with me on the Rose Reserve and see all the weird things that I do in my daily life.
It's awesome. Well, from I'll just provide a testimony for that. That your first of all, your website is awesome. So cool. So everybody should just go over just to check out the amazing style that you have with your website and the aesthetic. But also definitely check out Victoria's Instagram for all of these really honest and authentic and very thoughtful videos about everything we've talked about today. So cool. So the last question I love to ask, because this podcast is about, or this video series slash podcast is about helping people with that self-trust and confidence to live a life that they want, to live a life on their own terms. I'm reminded of a story of that my godfather, who was a doctor, he hosted an event where another doctor came to speak to medical students. And a lot of them were asking like nitty gritty questions about the medical process and about providing care and all these things. And the guy was like, just stop. And he asked all of them to define or to write down their definition of a good life. Not the good life, not the societal picket fence, American dream kind of good life, but what is a good life to them? And so I love asking that to all of my guests. So, Victoria, your turn. What do you think is a good life or constitutes a good life?
Sure. So mine has four components. I don't know what my obsession with four is lately, but I feel like it's a really good number to have. So four things.
I'm obsessed with the three.
Okay, yeah.
No
Well,
worries.
number is eight, so I'm like, oh, it's half of eight, like halfway there. But for me, there's four things. So love, purpose, abundance, and joy. And love in the capacity that you have self-love, and that you have deep and nurturing relationships, whether that's with a significant other, your family, friends, your coworkers that make you feel really fulfilled when you leave the conversation. I feel like I have that in my life, and it has been so moving to develop such deep relationships with my friends and some of my family members. Um, and I feel like that is probably like the most important thing to me, even like more important than my purpose, which I know is like not the best like entrepreneur thing to say, but like my relationships are everything to me. Um, and then the next thing is purpose, of knowing how you want to come out and be yourself in the world, whether that is having your own company, being a stay-at-home mom, um, being a teacher, like literally anything, as long as it is creating that spark in your life that you want to be a part of it and you want to put it out into the world. That's really important, because I feel like for a long time I didn't feel like like putting all of these pictures of my outfits online was like good enough. Like I had to be doing something like super substantial, like creating a cure for something. And so I feel like I held myself back that way. And it's like, no, like whatever you want to do is good enough for who you are and what society expects of you, which also, who cares? It's your golden path, is what they say in Chinese medicine, in face reading. And that is what you should always be aiming for, is like what it is specifically for you. And then abundance, I feel, is really important for me because I want to have the means to do whatever I want whenever I want. And like I just said, like money is a taboo topic for a lot of people. And it was for me for a really long time too. Like I couldn't even talk to some people without like crying about money. Um, and now it's just like, no, like I love money, money loves me, like it will start flowing. Like avalanches of abundance is like a really old like manifesting term.
Uh-huh.
And I feel like having the ability to just like say that out loud is like a really important thing, because it's like, well, you don't want to live like, I don't think it's like the right, personally I don't think it's the right way to live, to not have abundance flowing in your life, for whatever that means to you, like whatever number that is. So
Sure.
that's my third thing. And then my fourth thing is joy, which kind of weaves itself through all of these topics. And like finding joy in your everyday life. And even if it's like you can only do one thing at the moment, like starting there. And also joy of like being so happy that you're just happy and circumstances don't matter, like whatever is going on, not that you are bypassing your emotions, but you just have that peace and inner joy that nothing can shake you, and that you're just so unbothered. So yeah, those are my four things.
Wow. That's awesome. I love it. I love it. That's beautiful.
Thank
And you and I have been joking the past few days about book titles.
you.
I feel like everything that you just described is material for a perfect 4-part book already. Like everything in a really positive way. It sounded very much like you were describing like a manual for life.
Oh, thank you.
So that's
Yeah.
awesome.
It's funny. So even when I was saying the abundance thing and how I said there's like so much taboo, I was like even getting nervous saying it, like, oh, what if Taylor's listeners like don't like that I'm saying this? And I was like, girl, own that you love money. Like it's all good. But it's
Yeah.
like funny. I was like, I like the limiting belief came up in my head as I was saying that, and I was like, no, we love money over here. I
Yeah.
hope everyone can get to that state where they love money too, and it's not like, oh, I hate money because it's never there for me or anything. But this is a whole combo for another day.
Yeah. but but the fact remains that you just caught yourself and practiced what we've been preaching for the last hour and a half.
Exactly.
It's awesome.
Exactly. So
And it's funny, Brendan Burchard always talks about how the money, well, now I'm going to botch his quote, but money fuels the message.
yeah,
Like, so you got to like money to some extent, especially if you are trying to share some kind of message or share some kind of impact or effect for the world.
absolutely. And you don't want to be like going hungry or like worrying about money while you're doing this work, because it takes away your um, attention, which I that was like part of my issue too, is like I was so focusing on like how am I gonna like afford to live and all of this stuff that it took me away from my message for a while, and I couldn't even like focus on that because I was so focused on like, oh, I need to get all of these things in order so I can like do all of blah 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 whatever I was gonna do. I was like, okay, okay, we have lots of things to work on.
I know. Oh my gosh. And that just opens the door into entrepreneurship, of
Right.
just, especially solopreneurship when people start their own business. Because I love the reminder that you said about how it doesn't matter if people are starting their own company or maybe becoming a parent or changing
Mm-hmm.
jobs or moving or whatever it is. It doesn't need to be starting a business, even though I personally work with a lot of people who do start businesses.
Mm-hmm.
And you and I are examples of people who have gone full time with a business and are solopreneurs.
Mm-hmm.
But I appreciate your reminder that it's like anybody who's listening to this doesn't mean that it only applies to you if you have a business. It
Right.
applies to you with whatever kind of change you're scared of making in your own life.
Absolutely. Love.
Awesome. Yeah, I feel like we should just be like, okay, we're done, because we could go on for so much longer.
I
But
know.
maybe we'll
But
have to do an entrepreneurship episode sometime.
yes, like, uh, where are they in a year from now?
Yeah, exactly. Exactly.
Like, that'd be a cool episode, especially because you're launching your class too.
Hmm. Yep. Yeah. There's a little shameless plug. Yeah. Appreciate it. Uh, Victoria, this was so much fun. Like I said, this is the kind of conversation that I love to have because it could just go on for hours and you could lose track of time. But more importantly than that, because that's the selfish aspect and we just have fun having these conversations selflessly, what you just provided is just so much gold for people who are watching and listening. And you even packaged it into certain frameworks here and there too, that people could literally go do right now. And I think that's just so valuable. I so appreciate not only you taking the time to do this, but you also caring so much to put that integrity in and give that sort of advice and support to those who might be watching.
Well, it brought me a lot of joy. One of my four components. So
There you go.
thanks for having me.
Yeah, a pleasure. So I'll go ahead and link everything that we talked about in the show notes to Victoria's website, her Instagram, as well as potentially a link to join the waitlist if you're interested in joining the Dream Skin course and program when it comes out. Super exciting. And also, everybody, keep in mind, I'm going to be coming out with these videos pretty regularly, so make sure to hit the subscribe button so that you get a notification when I do. And we're going to have more awesome people on just like Victoria going forward. So thank you all so much for watching. Victoria, thank you so much again for joining me, and we'll see you all soon.